Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing a really deep exploration into the concept of the existence and oneness of the Creator.
And we're drawing specifically from some fascinating theological and, I guess, philosophical discussions that you've shared in the source material.
Right. And our goal isn't just to summarize these arguments. It's more about understanding, the logic that's holding them up.
We're trying to distill this core belief that that Allah exists and is unique in essence and attributes. So without a body, no specific location, no partners.
And we're going to look at the specific evidence presented to support this. So the mission here is really to give you a kind of structural blueprint of the arguments.
And the sources, they organize the evidence into two very distinct, very powerful categories.
What are they?
So first you have dalil naqli. That's the transmitted or, scriptural evidence.
And the second?
The second is dalil aqli, which is all about the rational and philosophical proofs.
And we're going to start where the sources do, which I think is the most logical place, establishing the credibility of the primary source itself.
It has to be the starting point, doesn't it? Before you can use any scripture to prove a creator's existence, you first have to prove that the scripture is actually from the creator.
So the authenticity of the text itself becomes the first proof.
Exactly. That's the foundation of dalil naqli.
But, how do you do that? How do you prove something is divine without already having that belief in the divine? What's the structure of that proof?
Well, the argument really hinges on the unique nature of the Quran and what the sources describe as the challenge of replication.
A challenge, like a dare.
It is, yeah. It's an intellectual dare. The text challenges all of humanity and jinn to produce a text exactly like it, or even just one small chapter, a surah.
And the idea is that this challenge has never been met.
Never, in all the centuries since it was issued. So the conclusion is that the text must be, it must be beyond human capacity.
Ah, so that completely shifts the burden of proof, doesn't it?
Also,
Instead of trying to prove the text is divine, the sources argue that the inability to replicate it proves it is not human.
precisely. And to make this really tangible, the sources use this beautiful analogy about replicability.
Okay.
They basically categorize everything in the world into two camps, things humans can easily duplicate and, things they can't.
So if I can make 1,000 copies of something,
Mm-hmm.
it's clearly a human product. The original didn't need some unique divine intervention.
Exactly right. You can create millions of copies of a clock, a piece of clothing, a turban. These are all reproducible inventions. It proves their human origin.
But then there's the other category.
Right. Consider things that are inherently unique, things that defy exact reproduction. The sources point specifically to, say, the human hand, or the uniqueness of an individual face. A head,
You can't make a perfect copy of those.
humans fail. You can clone a design, maybe, but you can't clone the essence of the human form itself.
I see.
So, since the Quran is presented as falling into that second category, this thing that defies replication,
It logically has to be placed in the category of things not created by humans.
that's the argument. It proves its divine origin. And once that foundation is accepted, that the text is the creator's word, then we can move on to the rational proofs.
The proofs contained both within the text and also, I guess, visible in the universe itself.
Exactly.
So that gives us a really solid textual base. Now, we leave the scripture behind for a moment and move into the dalil-i-aqli.
The rational proofs.
Right. And this is where we're supposed to use sound human intellect, or aqli aslim, to just observe and draw conclusions about reality. So where do these arguments even begin?
They begin with what is maybe the single most powerful concept in this whole discussion: contingency.
Contingency.
Yes. The philosophy here, it's often called istidlal bi makaniyat, and it starts with a very simple observation about the world around you,
And what's the observation?
that nearly everything we see, from you and me to the stars, the oceans, everything, is contingent.
Meaning its existence isn't guaranteed.
Exactly. Contingency means its existence or its non-existence is equally possible. It doesn't possess the inherent necessity to exist. The philosophical term is mumkin al-wujud.
Okay, so if I'm contingent, I can't be the source of my own existence. I have to depend on some external factor to bring me into being.
That is the absolute crux of it. A contingent being cannot originate itself. It requires a cause, a necessary source, what the sources call a mujid, to make it exist.
And if everything we see is contingent...
And dependent, then the chain of that dependence must eventually stop somewhere.
But wait a second, because we are designers ourselves, right? A human architect designs a brand new skyscraper. Isn't that also a form of creation?
That's a fantastic question, and it's a critical nuance the sources make very clear.
Okay.
Humans can certainly ijad. They can bring a new design into existence using materials that already exist.
Right. The architect creates the building, but they didn't create the steel or the concrete or the glass.
Precisely. The sources reserve the term khaliq, which means true fundamental creation, bringing something into existence from absolute nothingness for that singular independent source.
I see. So ijad is designing with ingredients. Khaliq is creating the ingredients themselves.
A perfect way to put it.
Okay, so let's go back to that chain of dependence. If my existence depends on my parents and theirs on their parents, why can't that chain just go backward infinitely? Why does it have to stop?
That's the classic logical challenge, isn't it? But the core insight is that an infinite chain of dependent causes just can't support existence itself.
What do you mean?
Think of it like a train. If every single car requires the car in front of it to push it, but there's no engine at the front,
The whole train stays motionless.
the whole train is going nowhere. You need an independent being, an uncaused cause, a pillar, an engine to start the movement.
An engine that doesn't need another engine to start it.
Exactly. And this independent being must, by necessity, be outside the cause and effect system entirely. Otherwise, it would be dependent, too. But it has to have the power to affect all the change we see.
And that establishes the logical necessity of a creator.
Yes, of a creator.
Okay, so moving forward. The sources don't just stop there. They transition immediately from proving the necessity of a creator to proving that this creator must be one.
Yes, and this is the argument that's rooted in universal order, or nizam.
The unity of the creator is shown by the unity of the universe.
And its seamless functionality. The logic is actually quite simple. If there were multiple deities, say 2 or 3, each one possessing ultimate power and will, their wills would inevitably clash.
The ultimate political deadlock.
You could call it that. The result would just be cosmic collapse. No stable, integrated system could possibly emerge or be maintained if you have competing intentions at that foundational level.
And the sources, they use a wonderfully relatable analogy for this.
They do.
Comparing the cosmic order to any complex human structure. A functional government, a school, a business, even just a marriage.
Any system, really.
Right.
To run efficiently, to avoid constant disruption, a system needs a single, centralized authority. A nazim.
And we see evidence of this single governance in the perfect balance of the cosmos.
Absolutely. The sun's distance from us, its heat, it's all perfectly regulated. If it were slightly closer
We'd burn.
and slightly farther,
We'd freeze.
right. And then you have the Earth itself. It's spinning at, what, roughly 1,000 miles per hour? Yet we feel no movement, no turbulence.
It points not just to a creator, but to a single, unified, perfectly governing force overseeing the entire system.
That's the argument from order.
The design is compelling at that macro level, but the sources also point to the incredible variety and deliberation that's visible in creation at the micro level.
And this is where the discussion really connects that big philosophical concept of oneness to just, everyday observation.
This variety, it argues against a random or purely automated process, right?
It does. If everything were automated, you'd expect uniformity. But instead, we see deliberate differentiation. The sources mention humans being created from lifeless soil, yet they become living, thinking beings.
And then there's the variety that comes from a shared source.
You're thinking of the shaytut leaf analogy.
Yes, tell us about that.
It's a great one. The same exact leaf is eaten by a goat, and it produces milk. A silkworm eats it, and it produces silk. A bee collects from it, and it produces honey.
The input is identical.
Identical, yet the resulting products are entirely specialized. This argues for a non-random producer with a very deliberate intention.
I found the arguments about human uniqueness particularly strong here. We're all made of the same basic components, yet every face, every thumbprint is unique.
It is.
But to play devil's advocate, if we accept that the universe is governed by immensely complex laws, couldn't a supremely complex machine also produce infinite unique variations without needing a conscious governor?
That's a great question, but the sources pivot from infinite variation to differentiated function. Meaning, the most compelling point is what they call the growth paradox.
The growth paradox.
Yes. If creation were purely automated, the growth rate of your hair should be uniform. But it's not. The hair on your head, your beard, your eyebrows, They all grow at different specialized speeds and to different lengths, all dictated by need.
That specialization points away from automated randomness.
And toward a conscious, customized form of governance. It's a level of detail that's hard to just brush aside.
Which brings us to the inevitable hurdle. We have to address the challenge from skeptics who demand empirical evidence. You know, the standard agnostic demand. If the creator exists, show us. Test it.
And the theological counterargument here is incredibly sharp because it challenges the internal consistency of the skeptic's own belief system.
How does it do that?
Well, the sources point out that we humans already accept countless crucial things that we cannot empirically test or see. We believe based on intellect, equal, and heart, dill, not just on sight, hiss.
Can you give us an example? An unseen reality we just accept every day.
The soul. The Ru. You can look at an unconscious person who's about to pass away. Physically, they look identical to a conscious person.
No visible difference.
None. Yet, we accept that the soul has departed. We believe in this unseen entity, the Ru, based purely on the functional change we observe, not because we can put the soul under a microscope.
And the same thing would go for emotion or pain. You can't visually see suffering.
But if someone tells you they're in agony, you accept it as reality.
You believe their testimony.
Exactly. And the most common, fundamental example they provide is identity. Every single person accepts the identity of their own father based purely on their mother's non-empirical testimony.
That's a powerful point.
It is. If we accept non-empirical testimony for something as critical as personal identity, why suddenly demand a fundamentally higher visual proof for the creator?
The belief system relies on integrating multiple forms of evidence, not just what's in a test tube. So to bring all of these complex philosophical points back down to, common sense and human intuition, the sources use some fantastic short anecdotes.
Yes, they're designed to appeal to our basic human nature, our fitra.
And they really synthesize the arguments we've been discussing, like the famous Bedouin's response.
Ah, yes. When he was asked for proof of the creator, he gave the simplest rational deduction. He said, camel droppings signify a camel and footprints signify a walker.
Do the heavens with their constellations and the earth with its valleys not signify the all-hearing, all-seeing?
It's a direct appeal to the law of cause and effect. So simple, so profound.
And linking back to that contingency argument, there's the story of Imam Jafar Sadiq and the shipwrecked sailor.
A great one. The sailor's boat failed, so he relied on a raft. When the raft failed, he still instinctively relied on some unseen power to save him from drowning.
After all physical means had vanished.
Exactly. And the Imam's point was that the power the sailor instinctively relied upon when all else failed, that one non-contingent source available in a crisis, that power is the creator.
So reliance on a necessary cause is actually inherent in our nature.
That's the argument.
And finally, tying it all back to the theme of oneness and order, the Nizam. There's the story of the illiterate woman and her spinning wheel.
Yes. She argued that the wheel's survival, its smooth operation for 30 years, proved that only one person had been operating it.
Why one person?
Well, she concluded that if two people were trying to run it, they would have inevitably fought over the machine, and it would have been broken a long, long time ago.
So that sustained, smooth order over time is proof of a singular, undisputed governance.
It's a microcosm of the entire universal argument.
That really is a comprehensive look at the arguments. We've moved from the textual integrity of a revelation through the philosophical necessity of an uncaused cause, and right down to these everyday observations of biological complexity and cosmic order.
It's a full spectrum. We've reviewed the Dali and Naqli, the proof based on the text's infallibility, and the comprehensive Dali Akli, the rational proofs of contingency and necessity, and the undeniable order and design of the universe. All from the sources you provided.
So what does this all mean?
I think it means that the theological framework we've discussed here isn't asking you to abandon logic or observation. Not at all.
It's asking for a different kind of consistency.
Yes. It places the demand for purely empirical, testable evidence on the same level as the acceptance of unseen realities, like the soul, like pain, that we already build our lives around every single day.
The arguments for existence and oneness are presented as this deeply interwoven structure of text, reason, and science.
They're meant to work together.
The ultimate takeaway for me, though, is that the existence of complexity is one thing, but the existence of specialized, differentiated complexity is something else entirely. That growth paradox, why one strand of hair grows long and fast and another grows short and slow, that demands consideration.
It's a powerful point.
The source material suggests that true complexity lies not just in a system existing, but in the deliberate, fine-tuned functioning of all its varied parts. So here's a thought to mull over. How often do you pause to consider the immense specialized variety in just everyday nature? And what does that persistent, specialized variety imply about the intention behind it all? Something to think about until our next deep dive.